Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes. This day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? I know it's a late night tonight, but I've had all kinds of meetings this week and cramming for the RP exam. But and hello Daisy Ford. Yes, live free or die. Or why pick just one? No, never mind. That's just an inside joke. But I wanted to make sure I got a broadcast out tonight since I didn't do one yesterday. And I'm not sure what's going on for tomorrow. This is just a crazy week. Again, cramming for my RP exam. Hopefully by this weekend I'll be caught up on a lot of things and we'll be back to normal. Though I've been trying to keep it as normal as possible. I need a drink. That's what I need. Before we get started on the book thingy, I need to do my shameless grifting for the month. There are new designs in the t-shirt store or the merch store. That is tinyurl.com/pink flame merch. There is a state crime one. So I know it's almost everyone's bedtime. I'll be up for a few more hours studying for my RP exam. So I'll do a show. There's a new discount code coming out for Teespring, and I'll show off some of the new merchandise then. And the last thing I wanted to add, well, two things. I need $16 a month to make my December Patreon goal. If you could help do that, it would be greatly appreciated. That's patreon.com/pink flame of liberty. So that's not bad. Just need $16 in pledges a month to make that goal. And lastly, all super chats matter. That's all I have to say. Okay, so we are now back to, it's been a while since we'd gotten to this book. And I decided to get back to it today because I did enjoy it so much, and we are almost, got on my little tiny glasses today, we are almost to the end. And I actually titled this wrong. I said The Right to Life. Actually, the chapter is called The Privilege of Life. And there is a lot of discussion material here. And I hope you guys interact with me because, you know, that's the way. I like it. Oof. Love that Grand Marnier. All right, so the privilege of life. It seems to me that he doesn't come out and say it, but it seems to me that Derek Willis shares at least my point of view on the rights of the unborn. I don't think either of us support laws outlawing abortion or anything like that, but personal conviction type thing. But he doesn't come out and say it here. Oh, God, man. You know, like, it's been so dry, like the tip of my nose is dry. Has that ever happened? Like, I'm sorry. It just feels so weird and dry. But anyway, he starts it out with a quote from Mother Teresa. I'm not so sure I agree with this quote from Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, in some ways, was very, very problematic. I know that's weird to say. But she said, the right to life does not depend and must not be declared to be contingent on the pleasure of anyone else. It seems to me, though, that she was probably saying that in the context of abortion. And saying that in the context of abortion, I think this quote is very, very wrong-headed. Because saying that another person doesn't have to support the life of another person doesn't mean that other person's right to life is contingent. It just means that you can't be forced to support another person, if that makes any sense. I've gotten into the whole abortion thing on multiple videos in the past. I can put links in the show notes if people are interested in that. I just didn't think that was a very good quote for a libertarian book. Because there are times where somebody can be helpless and dependent actually on the pleasure of someone else, and they have to be because you can't force someone else. That quote is just bad, in my opinion. So, I'm going to do a big chunk here in the beginning, that big highlight here in the beginning, and then we're going to talk about it. So he says, the Democratic Party cites the right to life as a response to a tragic shooting to push more gun control legislation, or as a justification for universal health care. The Republican Party cites it when pushing to ban abortion or for creating more security at the southern border. The Libertarian Party cites it as the reason they oppose capital punishment. No, we don't cite it. I don't know where he got that. The Libertarian Party cites it as the reason they oppose capital punishment, but it is never mentioned when they speak of a woman's right to choose. It therefore begs the question as to who is correct when it comes to the right to life. The answer, no one. I like the answer, though I'm not so sure it's true in every single case. But perhaps he means Libertarian Party members might cite the right to life when they oppose capital punishment, though I've never heard that, and our platform certainly doesn't. The platform just says that we oppose the, not implementation, the something of capital punishment, the application, I think, of capital punishment by the state. That's all it says. It doesn't ground it in anything, really. And most Libertarian Party members that start to give their justification for being opposed to capital punishment get much more nuanced, and he does that later on. But they don't just cite a basic right to life. I've never heard anyone do that. They'll usually cite something like the state screws things up if even one innocent person is wrongly put to death, that sort of thing. So I disagree with this paragraph, and it's But continuing, the funny thing about life is that it really is a binary topic. Either someone is alive or they are not. And someone who is alive either has the right to remain so or they do not. If there is any point at which one's philosophy acknowledges the right to life in one area but ignores it in another, then the philosophy is fatally flawed, and they cannot say they support the natural right to life without being hypocritical. But first, let's start with the basic question: is life a natural right? A silly question, to be sure, but one that seems to be constantly forgotten when topics shift from one to another. I think this paragraph is way too simplistic. I don't think people acknowledge the right to life in one area and ignore it in another if you take their philosophy within the boundaries of their own presuppositions. You can't import your suppositions in it to determine if someone's being consistent within their own presuppositions. So he continues, and I know it seems like I'm doing a lot of disagreement in the beginning. I am. When he wraps it up, I agree with him. I just don't like the way he got there. I don't think it's correct. Let us begin with a simple example. Bob is sitting at a bus stop when Jack decides to shoot and kill him. Is life a natural right? It's hard to imagine anyone answering no in this scenario, so we must change a few variables in order to make it slightly more complex. Bob is a Jew, the year is 1941, and he is sitting at a bus stop in Germany. Jack is a Nazi and follows all laws, regulations, and protocols to take Bob against his will where he is executed. In this scenario, Bob's death was a legal execution sanctioned by the state. Now the question can be asked a bit more specifically: is life a natural right? I don't think that's the question that's begged there, though. I think the question that arises there is, did Jack commit wrongful aggression? Of course it is wrongful aggression because your right to life does entail the right for someone not to kill you. But I don't know. It just seems really awkward. I mean, the logic in this particular example is sound, but it just seems kind of awkward. So he goes on. I myself used to be a staunch supporter of capital punishment, as did I. And I didn't change my mind, actually. I changed my mind through the weirdest thing. I didn't change my mind through the Libertarian Party. I changed my mind about capital punishment way before I became a Libertarian. And it actually was from a movie, and from a somewhat kind of cheesy, terrible movie that Susan Sarandon was in called Dead Man Walking. And that movie actually got me thinking. It didn't change my mind right away, but it got me really thinking about the topic. And it got me thinking not so much about the right to life of the person who was sentenced to execution, but the damage it does to the people who have to carry out the execution, and how it makes people who are just, employees within the prison system monsters themselves in trying to get rid of a monster. He says, for example, and I've never heard of this case he's going to bring up. It's quite terrible. And I don't know why I laughed. It's an uncomfortable laugh, when you talk about something quite terrible. And I really would love to hear y'all's thoughts. For example, on Christmas Eve 1987, James Eugene Bigby murdered 4 people over the course of 7 hours across Fort Worth and Arlington, Texas. One of his victims was a 17-week-old infant named Jason Kaler, whom he suffocated with a piece of cellophane and then placed the child face down in a water-filled tank. That's a monster. Bigby was executed by lethal injection on March 14, 2017. The question, however, remains, is life a natural right? Okay, let's just continue, because I'm going to be disagreeing in many ways here. Those who support the death penalty, my past self included, have often laid the claim that the person gave up their right to live when they committed murder. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad response. I wouldn't agree with it for reasons that he's going to later go on to, but I don't think that is a bad response, and I also don't think it is answered by the rebuttal, but life is a natural right. Because he's going to say, to this, the question must be raised as to whether it is possible to give up a natural right. The answer must be no. I absolutely disagree. You can give up a natural right. It's not a right if you can't lay it aside. That's just really, really strange to me. And give me 1 second. I have some spammers to get rid of who think they're in Gwar, apparently. Where is my channel monitors? Julian, wherefore out thou, Julian? Just give me 1 second here. Go to my YouTube studio and go to content, go to live, go to the live video, go to the link. Oh, I need to turn off my volume. And let's get rid of Ms. Priscilla Short with the spam. Remove. And Ms. Cassandra Ellis, those are just bot names, as we know. All right, let's continue where we were. Natural rights come from your right of self-ownership. Now, I know it's not technically ownership in the way you own a house. It's not the same way you own yourself. However, if you own yourself, you have the right to dispose of yourself as you see fit, and that includes giving up your natural rights. Now, can you permanently alienate your natural rights while you are alive? If you can't, then you can't punish criminals at all. Because how can you alienate them from their natural right of freedom of movement by putting them in jail? Now, there are some libertarians who think jail isn't a libertarian concept, and that's a discussion worth having. I don't agree with them. I do think you can alienate your natural rights, either through aggression or voluntary choice. And you voluntarily choose to do aggression, because if it was involuntary, you were insane or something, then we wouldn't be punishing you. So through your own actions, if you in fact do own yourself and your rights, you can alienate them. I absolutely fundamentally disagree with him there. Now, they're not alienable absent wrongdoing. They're not alienable by the state absent wrongdoing. They're not alienable by other people absent wrongdoing. So he gives another example. Imagine that Bob willingly sells his Ferrari to John. Lucky Bob has a Ferrari. Wow. While this voluntary exchange transfers title of ownership over this specific Ferrari from Bob to John, Bob still has the right to own that specific Ferrari again, provided the buyer voluntarily sells it back to him. This is because Bob's natural right to own property generally is unchanged. But can he give up that right? He can. Let's say he voluntarily decided to join a commune where people give up their rights to own anything. He can't do that. Now, he could always take it back, but he can give it up. Is there any, and I don't know if Derek is a Christian. He writes like a Christian, just to me. It's a sense I get. I could be wrong. Then I would ask him to seriously examine the theological concept of kenosis. And kenosis is where in the Bible it says that Christ emptied himself and took on the form of man. He laid aside, he gave up the prerogatives, the exercise of the rights of deity. Now, if God can do that, why can't man? If God can do that for such a greater right, why can't man do it for such a lesser right, particularly when we're created in the image of God? Is there any circumstance where Bob can give up his right to own that Ferrari or the ownership of property generally? The answer, again, must be no. It's not no. You can do that. That's what panarchy is all about. You can join some kind of voluntary society where you all agree. Oh my God, that is so funny. I'm sorry. I'm going to put this joke up. That is hilarious. You just made me smile. You can agree to give up your property. You can give up your rights. Okay, I'm going to put this up here. This is great. Someone told me today that I was so ugly that Hello Kitty said goodbye to me. Taxing. I'm taxing that. That's fantastic. Thank you for making me laugh. The answer again must be no. Is that what distinguishes a right from a privilege? Disagree. A privilege has nothing to do with giving up something. A privilege has to do with you forcing somebody to do something to you. This is just a complete confusion of concepts here. The same logic applies to the natural right to life. Well, I think I've disproven that. Both life and the right to life are still two different things. If Bob willingly jumps in front of a bus and dies, regardless if he did so solely to kill himself or if he was trying to save someone else, he still retained his right to live, but his voluntary action to jump in front of the bus resulted in him losing his life. And someone's voluntary action to decide to engage in aggression against somebody means that they've given up their right not to have violence done against them that could cause them to lose their life. And I will not take away your right to tell jokes because you told a funny one. In both scenarios, Bob never gives up his right to own property nor his right to live. He gave up possession of his right to live when he jumped in front of a bus, though. This unequivocally means that no one can ever give up a right. You did not prove that, Derek. The only thing one may give up is the specific possession of what the right allows. But isn't that then getting into esotericism? What good is a right, like to say, well, I have it, but I'm not exercising it? That is giving it up, because a right, that's what a right is. But okay, if you want to get into like parsing out words here, you always have the right, but you can give up the use of it. I think that's a distinction without a difference. Giving up these specific possessions under natural law requires the person to voluntarily surrender them. Yes, as when they kill another person, for instance. Anyone who aggresses against someone else and forcibly takes possession of their property has broken the laws of nature and forfeited possession of some of their rights. Since in the case of capital punishment, no voluntary surrender of life has been given, it hasn't. That's an assumption you're making here. If someone is trying to kill you and you kill them, they were voluntarily trying to kill you. They've given up their right to not have you aggress against their right to life, which means they have, in fact, given up their absolute right to life. The hard truth is that despite the incredibly strong emotional argument behind the support of capital punishment, and by the way, I don't support capital punishment. I just think the arguments aren't good here. He's going to get into a much better argument in a few moments. Executing, and here's where it is. Never mind a few moments. Okay, let me start this sentence over. Because this is what convinced me of the libertarian grounds to oppose capital punishment. The hard truth is that despite the incredibly strong emotional argument behind the support of capital punishment, here's the key. Executing an unarmed person that is not an active threat against another individual is, without doubt, murder. And the one who actually convinced me of this argument, despite how far off the rails he's gone today and not a friend of mine today, was former Chair Nick Sarwark, where he gave the example that if someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night and you catch them looming over your bed, you can shoot them on the spot and kill them. However, if instead you don't shoot them, you disable them in some other way, and then you lock them in the shed, in your shed in the backyard, and you feed and house them for 6 months, you can't then go out there one day, take them out, put them on their knees and go, today's your day, boom, right in the head. That would be murder. And that is exactly what the state does. They render somebody helpless before them and then execute them. That is murder. That is the good argument against capital punishment, that the person has forfeited their right not to have their life aggressed against as long as they are actively aggressing against you or another person. But once that threat has been neutralized, you can't kill them. Okay, where were we at here? I lost my spot. Okay, here we go. The same is true for the issue of gun rights. And then he gives way more charitable characterization than I would give. For sake of ease, I will herein categorize everyone who supports any gun control legislation under the umbrella term gun controller. I would call him a gun grabber. Though I do recognize that those who support the full ban of all private firearm ownership are worlds apart from those who only support so-called, quote-unquote, common sense gun safety laws like background checks. I don't think they're worlds apart. I don't think there's degrees of rights violations. You violate a right or you don't. Gun controllers are always motivated by the tragic loss of an innocent life by an evil person using a firearm, and this is by no means something that should be dismissed. They're always motivated? I don't think everyone's always motivated by that. Some of them are motivated by the fact that they want the state to be able to put down uprisings. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be a gun grabber. A lot of them are motivated by violent crime. Yes, seeking to suppress violent crime, but not all of them. That was kind of a sloppy statement of his. I would say you engaged in deadly fraud. Here's the question. I can't pronounce your name. KBG Guru. Am I allowing someone their right to bear arms? You don't allow someone their right. They have the right. If I challenge them to a duel, well, they could always bring their own gun and hand them a firearm without them knowing I removed the firing pin. I would say that you murdered them. I think that would be a case of murder if you killed them when they thought they were on equal terms, and it's also fraud because they agreed to a duel with you on equal terms, not with you being armed and them not. And yes, I do think dueling should be perfectly legal. If two people want to go out shooting at each other to settle a dispute, I think it's stupid, but go for it as far as I'm concerned. I think there might be a lot less rudeness in the world if that happened. But who's to tell two people that they can't settle a dispute by shooting each other? I don't know. To me, that doesn't even sound crazy. Like, I don't know. That just doesn't even sound shocking. Maybe I've been in a libertarian bubble for too long, but I have no idea why dueling is not legal. Victims of gun violence have had their lives robbed of them. The victims' loved ones have also been robbed of the victim's life, as they will never again get to see or speak with them unless, you're a religious person in which you believe that you have the hope that will happen. It is certainly something with which any sane person can sympathize. True, whether religious or not. It's still painful, even if you have a hope that you're going to see this person again. That doesn't mean that murder isn't any less tragic. As cold as it may sound, and I do not mean this to be so, tragedy is not a valid reason to deprive any individual of their natural rights. And that is, in fact, true. And you shouldn't have to apologize for saying that. It's not cold. It's cold to say your tragedy means you get to deprive other people of their rights. Many gun controllers beg the nonsensical question of where nature provides us guns or where religious scripture commands us to own same. To answer it simply, every individual has the right to own whatever property he wishes and has the right to own whatever tools he deems necessary to defend his life and property from any outside aggressor. He's going to get into this. And Julian, I needed you a few minutes ago because we had a couple spammers, but I took care of them. I'm going to disagree with him on this statement. This is one of my libertarian heresies. Now, I don't think it's a heresy. I think I can defend it on libertarian grounds, but I do know very many other hardcore radicals like myself disagree with me on an issue we're going to get into, and that is, in Libertopia, would it be allowable for a person to have private nuclear weapons? I say no. That is my heresy, but I'll defend it. Every individual has the right to make the determination for themselves what tools they deem necessary to adequately defend their lives, liberty, and property from those who seek to usurp it. Notice there is not a specification of an enemy. This is because any entity, even one's own government, forget even one's, especially one's own government, may be an enemy for anyone. This is the very reason that one should have legal access to the same weaponry as the most powerful government on the planet. Now, that I will qualify my nuclear statement with. As long as governments are allowed to own nuclear weapons, then private people should be as well. But I don't think government should be either. So that's why I said in Libertopia, where we wouldn't have nuclear, hopefully we wouldn't have government. In my anarchist wet dream, we would not. Okay, then he goes on. This is where we're going to talk about my libertarian argument against private nukes. Does this include nuclear weapons? Yes. However, there is one minor detail that conveniently gets overlooked when going to the extreme of fully militarized fighter jets. And I don't know why he categorized nuclear weapons with fighter jets. I think there should be, and I have no issue with people owning fighter jets. And ICBMs. I am a pacifist. I don't know what's an ICBM. Intercontinental ballistic missile. Oh my God, if I as a pacifist know that. That's nuclear weapon though, isn't it? Isn't an ICBM nuclear? So why would you have that as separate? Let me look. I'm looking up ICBM. I am so not like a weapons person. Yes, it's nuclear weapon. So it's the missile. I guess it's the delivery system for a nuclear weapon. I got it. Okay. But since it's the delivery system, the issue is the nuclear weapon, not the rocket. If you want to have a rocket that doesn't deliver anything, I don't give a shit. It's the nuclear part. As I have previously outlined, capitalism requires both a supply and a demand to function. For private ownership of nuclear weapons to ever be a reality, there first must be a demand. A demand requires the ability to purchase, and for nuclear weapons, it's quite costly. And that is true, though I'm going to totally disagree with his argument here. But before we get into his capitalism argument here, because I think he's wrong, I want to put this comment up here. KB, the name I can't pronounce, says, while nuclear weapons are not technically firearms, isn't that what the Second Amendment refers to when it comes to bearing arms? Because nukes didn't exactly exist back then. I'm coming at this from a libertarian perspective. I'm not a constitutionalist. I love the Second Amendment as far as it goes, but it doesn't go nearly far enough. So I don't really give a shit what the Constitution says. I have a natural right to defend myself. So I don't limit it to the Second Amendment. But I also don't think you can say the Second Amendment only refers to what existed back then, because technology advanced even in the lifetime of the writers of the Constitution, and arms got more advanced. And I don't think anyone who in the first generation of this country would say, well, at the time that was written, it referred to barrel loading with, powder things. And as weapons became even more sophisticated then, it couldn't refer to X weapon. So no, I don't find that argument persuasive, but to me it doesn't matter because I don't base any of this on the Constitution whatsoever. I'm an anarchist. I'm not. I'm an opportunist when it comes to the Constitution. I will use it where it suits me, and I will discard it where it doesn't suit me. Okay. But where I disagree I don't believe that individuals have the right to have private nuclears for the same reason I don't think governments have that right when governments exist. Your right to self-defense has a limit to it, and it's called proportionality. If, for instance, I believe it should be legal to own fully automatic weapons. However, it should not be legal to use them in every possible circumstance. If you're like in the middle of an apartment complex and someone breaks in and you've got neighbors all around you with paper-thin walls, you can't just spray in a 360 to kill the intruder because you are putting other lives at risk who were not aggressing against you. However, if you are out in the field, no problem. Fire away. I don't care. So, when it comes to nuclear weapons, it's impossible to use them proportionally. I don't think a weapon that is impossible to be used proportionally is a self-defense weapon. And what you have a right to is self-defense. You do not have a right to aggression. And you cannot use a nuclear weapon without, by necessity, and it's absolutely impossible to use it without aggression. So no, I don't think that's a valid self-defense weapon, and I don't think anyone should be allowed to have them. Now, Starchild raised a very interesting question to me. He actually raised several very interesting questions to me. He goes, well, what if someone didn't want it as a weapon? They just like looking at it. I think that gets really far into the weeds. And any item which has the potential, by its very nature, not the misuse of it, by its very nature, its primary purpose is non-proportional harm, then no. And if that makes me an imperfect libertarian, because I don't think you should be able to have your art display that includes a nuclear weapon, I could live with that. That would also go for things such as biological weapons for the exact same reason. Alrighty. But now let's get to his capitalism argument, which obviously I'm a shameless capitalist, as shown by my grifting. Become a patron, help me get my extra $16 a month. I just don't agree with where he takes this. I don't think it's correct. He says the definition of an ultra high net worth individual is someone who has a net worth of over $30 million, and that is just about 226,450 people, or 0.003% of the global population. That is not enough of a population to justify a demand in any market, even if 100% of them actually wanted a nuclear weapon. You don't think 226,000 people is a good market? I do what I'm doing right now part-time, and I've got 3,300 subscribers, and it's worth it to me. How in the world would 226,000 people not be a good market? If you are still here, Julian, can you get rid of Ms. Bot Sherilyn Turner? Thank you. I don't see how there's plenty of businesses whose market base is much less than 226,000 people. I don't know where he got this argument from. He said, for the sake of argument, pretend that Jeff Bezos decided he wanted to purchase a nuclear weapon. He has the resources to do so, but for him to acquire one, he needs a willing seller. Since the U.S. hasn't manufactured a new nuclear warhead since the 1990s, we don't know that, but okay. There is quite literally zero supply. No, there isn't, because the U.S. isn't the only supplier. When the Soviet Union went under, all kinds of backpack nukes went missing. There is a supply. Terrorists are actively out there looking to buy nuclear weapons. You don't think Jeff Bezos could? This argument is bad. Bad argument. You should feel bad for making it. Capitalism alone would keep nuclear weapons and F-35s from being privately owned by any population, even if it were 100% legal to do so. Disagree. If there was $1 million profit to be made, there would be a market, even if it was only one buyer. That's just nonsensical. I'm sorry. I loved everything in your book, Derek, but that one argument was a stinker, I think. I'd love to have you come on and debate me about it. Friendly. Okay. It says here, the mere possession of any weapon, be it an M2HB 50 caliber machine gun, an F-16 with a fully loaded 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon, like he just gives all these weapons, does not infringe on any other individual's natural rights. In its most technical sense, it does not. However, The way you're justifying it being okay to have them is because you're allowed to choose your tool for self-defense, and some of those things you mentioned you cannot use proportionally, if any of those were nuclear, and one of them was. But the other ones I'm fine with. And Julian, also, we got a gooner who needs to be goner. While capitalism will essentially ensure that the latter two will not be possessed, what's the latter two? I don't know even what he's talking about, because I don't agree with him on that argument. By the general public. Well, not the general public, but the wealthy public. And let's go, Brandon. Society should not fear the private ownership of a belt-fed machine gun, I don't, or even handheld explosives like frag grenades and flashbangs. Well, the cops already have them, and I don't quite, I fear the cops. It's not because they have the weapons, it's because they're cops. So now he goes back to his why capital punishment is wrong, and this is where argument gets a much better footing. The point at which the aggressor either surrenders or flees, using deadly force against him would constitute murder under natural law. I would expand that. Oh, there was something with all like Greek letters, Julian. Maybe I'm the only one who maybe it's on Facebook. Let me look. Oh, it's on Twitch. That's why you don't see it. Sorry. We can't do anything about Twitch, I guess. I'm going to have to figure out how to get moderators on Twitch, I guess. I don't usually have Twitch commenters. Hello, Twitch people. I need to, interact more directly on Twitch. It's a platform I'm not terribly familiar with yet. I would say the point at which the aggressor either surrenders, flees, or is rendered impotent in some way. You disarm him, whatever. He's no longer an active threat. Using deadly force against him would constitute murder under natural law. Justin, it says if the mechanism or response to aggression must be proportionate, do we not hamper innovation? I think you're misunderstanding my use of proportionate. By proportionate, I don't mean that rocks get answered with rocks. What I mean by proportionate is that you don't cause greater damage than is necessary to neutralize the threat. Meaning, if someone is coming at you with deadly force, and a rock can be deadly force, you can kill that person. You can't endanger other people in order to kill that person. How you kill them is your business. I'm not saying you can only use a rock. You could use a machine gun if you could do so proportionally. I don't mean proportional against the person necessarily, though in some circumstances, when you're talking about response, should be proportional. In this, I'm talking about more proportional as to the scope, if that makes sense. Now, proportionality in response would be like I would disagree with before he became the crying Nazi. Chris Cantwell had said he was a libertarian. He had said if someone steals a paperclip, you could kill them. That's proportionality in response. I do not agree with him because there's no danger of your life in somebody stealing a paperclip. Now, unless they broke into your house in the middle of the night purposely just to steal your precious paperclip, but that isn't what he meant. Yeah, that's more what I meant, Justin, Carmen. Collateral damage. It needs to be narrowly focused to the actual threat. Okay. Then we're going to get to the last paragraph here, which is going to make some people uncomfortable. So let me preface it, and I need a little more drink to preface this. Let me preface this that I'm not, as a Libertarian Party member, condoning the implications of what's being said here. Plus, I'm a pacifist. Even if I wasn't a Libertarian Party member, talking about laying aside rights, I have laid aside my right to lethal self-defense. For religious reasons, not political reasons. I'm never been like an actual Quaker, but I'm of high sympathies to a lot of the theological tradition of the Anabaptists and Quakers. Therefore, I am a religious pacifist. So I'm not condoning, suggesting, or advocating the implications of what he's going to say here. But I do think we have to admit that the implications are there. And the fact that the Libertarian Party disavows and has laid aside its right to violent revolt against the government doesn't mean you don't have that right. It just means if you want to be a Libertarian Party member, you have to disavow that right. Okay, so let's continue. The right of the people to rise up against and subsequently overthrow their government is not a violation of natural law. Absolutely is not. It is a right that you have. It should be noted, however, that the premeditation of revolution must be carried out when direct, active hostilities are presented from the state. Well, there's always direct, active hostilities from the state, but he's going to quantify what he means, and I agree with him. For example, it is a violation of natural law to begin a revolution with the preemptive bombing of a government building, a la Tim McVeigh. Absolutely agree. Such an act would invoke casualties of non-combatants. Even if it didn't invoke casualties of non-combatants, even if it was all just like government employees or all people who in the future would take arms against you, it's still wrong because they're not actively threatening you in that particular building at that particular moment. Though there are likely several appropriate ways to revolt against one's oppressive state, one proper way, for example, would be to refuse to have your taxes withheld and subsequently refuse to file them. Once audits are ignored for a substantial amount of time, the state will certainly send combatants to invoke violence against the individual. At that point, the state has taken up armed hostilities against them. During war, any aggression shown towards any non-combatant or even a surrendered combatant would be a violation of natural law. Agree. But he kind of breezed over what he's implying here. He goes, at that point, the state has taken up armed hostilities against them. And therefore, what? And this is what gets libertarians, including myself, very uncomfortable. But the fact is, even though they would be disqualified from most likely being an advocate for the Libertarian Party because we eschew violent revolution against the state, not because you don't have the right to do it, but because we think that's the wrong approach at this point in time, that we believe in the peace, pursuing every peaceful means so that revolution is not necessary. But if any aggression, if at that point the state has taken up armed hostilities against the tax dodger, that means the tax dodger can fire upon and kill the IRS agents that come for him. That is the implication of what's being said here. I wouldn't recommend it. That's a death wish. But that's not really the point of what's going on here. So people get very uncomfortable with this question, and I've wrestled with this question for a very, very long time. Back when I was a brand new libertarian, started asking me questions like this, and I didn't really understand like what was meant by the pledge. It seemed to me that the party was taking a moral stand against violent revolution, and they're not. But I didn't know that at the time. I was a brand new libertarian. And when I hesitated to say, if you haven't aggressed against somebody and a cop comes for you, are you justified in killing that cop? I hesitated. Because I'm a pacifist, so any thought of violence just really is not something I'm ever comfortable with. It wouldn't need to be a cop. Someone saying an armed intruder in your house, I wouldn't shoot and kill them. It's just my religious conviction. But he said, that's the problem with you libertarians. You like to talk, he didn't word it this way, but this is basically what he said. You like to talk a lot of shit, but you're unwilling to taste your own wares. And that bothered me for many years, until I worked all of this out, that the LP does not take a moral stance against self-defense against the state. It just basically says that's a suicide mission, and we are not here to lead a bunch of people on a suicide mission. Thank God, because I wouldn't be involved. But it's very nuanced discussion. Remember, this country was founded on revolution. And it's funny that a country founded on revolution makes treason a crime. It means that we're all founded on crime, are we not? We were treasonous against the monarch. That is just so bizarre to me. But anyway, So that was, I thought, quite a deep chapter. A lot of good discussion points. So our next chapter in here is The Injustice System, chapter 7. I like to warn you guys how many pages. He writes nice short chapters. I like it because it's easily digestible. It's only 10 pages, and that's the next one that we will do. And we are 90 pages away from the end. And thank you, CJ. I'll go check out that TikTok. I need to record more on TikTok. My problem is the 3-minute limit. I barely get warmed up in 3 minutes. Brevity is not a strength of mine. All right, everyone. I hope you have an awesome night. I'm going to get back to studying. I'll try to record something tomorrow, but I'm not sure because I'm doing an interview for my radio program, I think, tomorrow. I've got a ton of history stuff to do. Okay, but have a good night, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I love you.
What you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.